Welcome to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Stocks fall. Cases of COVID-19 continuing to resurge around the world, and in the U.S. specifically, Arizona and California struggling to maintain outbreaks. Florida reporting a record number of deaths. We are standing by right now for President Trump, who will be holding another news briefing this hour. We'll take you there when that starts live. And tomorrow, a big day on Capitol Hill and a big day for Silicon Valley. The CEOs of Facebook, Google, Alphabet, and Apple and Amazon will all be testifying on the Hill before the House Antitrust Subcommittee. We're going to speak to a member of that committee, Representative Hank Johnson, in just a moment. But first, all of these companies will be reporting earnings on Thursday. We want to take a look at how markets are moving ahead of those reports. I want to bring in Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons, who's been following the market moves today. Kaylee, break down the day for us. Why the downward move?
Yeah, well, we really saw that downward move heading right into the close. Of course, there is a lot going on this week. It is by far the busiest of earnings season. We have, of course, that tech antitrust committee hearing tomorrow, as well as a Fed decision. I mean, there's a lot going on that overall leading to a risk-off tone, especially so for the NASDAQ, which ended the day lower by about 1.25%. It really was tech that were among the biggest laggards today, as well as some of those classic cyclical trades, the likes of energy and materials down at the bottom of the barrel from a sector perspective today, while it was those defensive sectors that were outperforming. The likes of real estate and utilities were actually up 1.5% to 2%. Those bond proxy stocks getting a boost as we saw yields move lower by about 4 basis points. We're now sitting at 58 basis points on the 10-year yield. That is within 4 basis points of that all-time close on that yield, that record low we saw back in March. So that really underscores the fact that it is kind of a risk-off tone that we saw today, with a lot of risk events on the horizon over the next 2 or 3 days, Emily.
Speaking of safety, we're continuing to see dramatic moves when it comes to the dollar and gold. What kind of signal is that sending? Yeah, we continue to see that weaker dollar story, although it's really roughly flat at this moment. And gold futures crossed that 2,000 level at one point today, sitting now at a record high. To some degree, the surge we've seen in gold is that desire for safety, but it also has to do with the weaker dollar and real yields that continue to move further and further into negative territory. But this is also an inflation story, Emily, with the record amount of stimulus we've gotten from monetary and fiscal authorities, all that money we're pumping into the system. That could mean inflation down the road. Gold seen as kind of a way to hedge that. And really the call of the day for me came from Goldman Sachs, who said the dollar is in danger of losing its status as the world reserve currency. For that reason, they don't think it's going to happen in the near term, but still this debasement fear, those strategists, including Jeff Curry, now see gold as the currency of last resort. All right, Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons there with the update on the day. Thank you so much, Kaylee, for rounding that out for us. Meantime, as I mentioned, tomorrow, the CEOs of Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google will be testifying on Capitol Hill before the House Antitrust Subcommittee. It's going to be a virtual hearing, so all of the CEOs will be remote in. One of the people questioning them will be Representative Hank Johnson, who joins us now to discuss. Representative Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. What exactly are you going to be asking the CEOs tomorrow?
Well, I think it's important that the American people get a chance to understand the effect that giant market dominant players have on the overall economy, and how the position that these dominant platforms and their owners have affects the economy. And so from the standpoint of the American dream, a small business owner being able to manufacture a good or sell a product or a service, and the kinds of barriers that they have to overcome in order to get their product or service to market, based on having to go through these dominant platforms and players who own the platforms, just how that plays a part in how our economy functions. And so it's an educational process for the American people, and it's also an opportunity to send some messages to the regulators about the problems that everyday people are having when they have to deal with these companies. And so the companies we're talking about, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple, are all dominant players, and they pretty much dominate the platforms upon which they operate. And they do it to the detriment of consumers, ultimately. But basically, large businesses and small businesses alike have to play by the rules, or else they can't play at all. And this hurts our economy and hurts the ability of people to achieve the American dream.
Now, when you look at these four companies, does any one or two stand out as more egregious on antitrust than the rest?
Well, they all pretty much operate from a common playbook. The ability to impose rules on people that want, and companies that want to deal with them, and how the rules can be arbitrarily changed so as to benefit the dominant player as opposed to the smaller entity that's trying to do business on the platform. And the fact that the platform is the economy is dependent on the platform. There's nowhere else for the business or the consumer to go other than through the platform to get a particular good and service. And then these players also compete directly against those small companies, those small and large companies that are seeking to do business over those platforms. They have to compete with the platform owner, and it's not fair, and it's anti-consumer. It's also anti-small business. So there's a common playbook. They amass large amounts of data, and they use that data to give them a leg up on any competition that would come their way. And then also in terms of buying off any competition before it gets large enough to affect the dominant player. So these are common plays in the playbook that these companies use. And so not just one or two of them, but all four of them use these same practices.
Now, Facebook, Google's, YouTube, and Twitter all pulled a video today promoting hydroxychloroquine as a cure for COVID-19. Twitter even temporarily suspended Donald Trump Jr. for tweeting out this video. What part of that is a problem for you? The video had already gone viral.
Well, yeah, I mean, some good things take place, but a lot of bad things can take place also when you talk about the ability of false messaging to proliferate. And the only guardian is the platform itself to be able to cut down on what are lies and deceit that are distributed to cause a reaction, to cause people to do something. And that is that is very dangerous to our society, to have the platform owner be the decision maker over what goes over the platform. And so and when you put that in a situation where there is a total lack of regulation or a lack of laws that govern the conduct, and then there's no competition on the other hand, and so the company pretty much gets a chance to do whatever it wants to do. And if it decides to pull something, that may be a good thing, but the problem is there's so much that is not being pulled. There's so much information that is being amassed and used against people. And then there's so much information that is being disseminated that is being used to hurt people as well. So There's a lot of problems and no regulation over these companies, and it's a big problem.
Meantime, Politico is reporting on Mark Zuckerberg's prepared testimony for tomorrow, where the CEO of Facebook is prepared to say that the fight against disinformation and misinformation needs work. I do want to turn quickly. Earlier today, you conducted a stirring interrogation of Attorney General William Barr. You told him that his opening statement read like it had been written by Alex Jones or Roger Stone. Were you satisfied with his answers today?
Well, you know, Attorney Barr is a smart man. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows what he doesn't need to say. And so he's very careful in his responses to direct, simple questions. He's very careful. He is intent on avoiding answering difficult questions. And that's what he did today, kind of skipped around. And but it's clear in his actions that what he has done is put his finger or his thumb on the scale of justice to benefit President Trump by letting President Trump's co-conspirators off the hook on their criminal cases so that they will not spill the beans on the president. And that is obstruction of justice by Attorney Barr himself. But of course, he's not going to admit to doing that. He's going to couch it in terms of, I'm doing what I think is the right thing to do. But when he's never done it before on behalf of anyone other than friends of the president, I think people can see through it.
All right. Well, we will be listening to your questioning of the tech CEOs tomorrow. Representative Hank Johnson, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts ahead of that hearing today. All right, coming up, we're going to be talking to Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, the maker of the hit game Fortnite. Sweeney calls Apple and Google absolute monopolies. He'll tell us why in an exclusive conversation next. This is Bloomberg. As we've been covering, 4 of the biggest tech CEOs are set to testify on Capitol Hill tomorrow. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney, meantime, is calling out Google and Apple for being absolute monopolies. Epic Games, of course, is the maker of the hit game Fortnite. I spoke to Tim Sweeney earlier today.
You know, the market is Google and Apple. Those are your 2 choices for mobile platforms. Apple says, if you don't like our platform, use Google, and Google says the converse. But you know, the problem is these companies are using their control of the operating systems powering the devices to exercise a monopoly over all commerce that is conducted between consumers and businesses that happen to use their devices. Apple says, if you build an app for our platform, first of all, you can only distribute it through their store. They don't allow competing stores. Like, imagine a town that only allowed Target and disallowed any other stores from building venues. I mean, that's totally un-American and uncompetitive. But that's exactly what Apple does in an absolute sense. Apple's rule is simply prohibited. You know, whereas Google has created a semi-open platform with Android. The core of it, the software is an open platform, but then they layer on all of these business terms with the Google Play Store and with Google Search, which force everybody to, force all of the carriers making devices to lock it down and limit it. But the effect of that is that Apple and Google are taking 30% of all revenue through commerce. They're deciding what kinds of apps you're allowed to build and which ones you're not. And they're preventing entire categories of innovation in technology. You know, Microsoft is building this amazing xCloud service so you can stream any game over internet servers to any device, and you can have a high-end Xbox powering experience in playing it on your smartphone. And Apple says no. Apple says you cannot have that idea on our device. And that's got to stop. You know, what we really need is is competition among stores, among payment services, so that developers and consumers can choose each component of the software stack they want to use and not be forced to use only Apple's.
Apple also says 84% of the apps on the App Store are free. And I've talked to plenty of developers who are grateful for the services that Apple provides. Don't you think you should pay some form of rent, if you will, to access those services?
Yeah, competition is the way that prices are set in a fair market, right? For example, Apple provides bandwidth to all of these free apps and to paid apps so that you can download them to your device. And who else provides bandwidth? Akamai is the #1 provider of CDN bandwidth in the country, probably world, and Amazon is a competitor in the space. And there are market rates associated with paying for bandwidth. There are market rates associated with payment processing. PayPal charges 2.5%. MasterCard and Visa charge 2.5% to 3.5% for payment processing. And the problem with the 30% that Apple and Google charge is it's completely disconnected from any actual costs of their business. And Epic, we know this. We run a store. We run the Epic Games Store. Epic has processed over $1 billion worth of direct transactions between players and our company on Windows, on Mac, and on Android. And we know the cost of operating the store. The cost of operating a store is 5 to 7% of revenue for Epic. And Apple and Google have way, way higher economies of scale. And you can break down the cost by component. And it has nothing to do with these rents that Apple and Google are charging. And so, and Epic is always happy to pay providers for a fair service that they provide. And we like to choose between providers, right? We'd like to choose between Apple's payment service and PayPal and MasterCard and Visa and make them compete to offer the best rates or the best quality of service. And Apple and Google are entirely denying that in the way they've locked their platform down.
So you use the word monopoly.
Yeah, it's a duopoly. There are two companies together. They control 100% of the smartphone market, or something like 99.9%. And if you look in a lot of territories, Apple has the majority of revenue in many of these countries. Other countries, Google has majority of revenue, but it's impossible to look at a territory and say that in this place, Apple or Google is not a monopoly. They have monopoly, and they have business practices that only a monopoly could get away with. You cannot explain what they're doing in any terms other than compulsion.
Now, you launched the Epic Games Store for Windows and Mac, and you charge a 12% fee. Why do you think 12% is fair?
Well, we looked at the costs of operating the service. And they're really transparent, right? Payment processing, 2.5% to 3.5% in major developed economies, as much as 6 to 8% in developing economies. Bandwidth is 1 to 1.5%. Customer service, 1 to 1.5%. And so we're able to operate our store, charge 12%, and make a 5 to 7% profit margin for ourselves. And so it's not altruistic, right? This is a great business, and we love having the opportunity to earn a 5% profit from games made by other people by offering them our store. But the difference between Epic and all of the PC stores.
All right, looks like President Trump is stepping up to the podium. Let's listen in.
Today, my administration has taken a momentous step toward achieving American pharmaceutical independence. Very, very big step. A focus of our campaign to bring America's critical supply chains and medical manufacturing back to the USA. We've been working on this for a long time. This is a core of our strategy to protect our people from the horrible China virus. Should have never happened, should have never been here. They should have stopped it. In the decades before I took office, foreign nations were allowed to freely plunder our factories and loot our industries, take our business out of the United States. Millions of jobs were vacuumed out, just taken out so easily. Our politicians let that happen, and our communities were stripped and shipped in many cases to China and all over the world, countries all over the world. Nearly 4 years ago, we launched a bold effort to revitalize American manufacturing, enact fair trade deals, and bring our industries back home where they belong. When the China virus landed on our shores, it became clearer than ever before that restoring American manufacturing is a core matter of national security. We must never be reliant on a foreign nation for America's medical or other needs, and that includes many other needs. I just want to say that Pfizer just announced a little while ago that they're combining phase 2 and phase 3 trials, and the vaccine looks like it's really heading in a very rapid direction and a very positive direction. First time that's happened, and they're many months ahead of any other trial. There's never been anything like it. So it's the fastest ever, and to me, it's very exciting. Today, I'm proud to announce one of the most important deals in the history of U.S. pharmaceutical industries. My administration has reached a historic agreement with a great American company. You remember this company? It's called, from the good old camera age, the old days, to begin producing critical pharmaceutical ingredients. It's called Kodak, and it's going to be right here in America. So I want to congratulate the people in Kodak. They've been working very hard. Members of my administration are present in Rochester right now, Rochester, New York, good place. And they're trying to finalize this groundbreaking deal, and they will be announcing this deal. I want to thank Governor Andrew Cuomo and his representatives. We've worked really well together on this deal. It's a big deal. It's a great deal, and a great deal for New York and a great deal for Kodak. 90% of all prescriptions written in the United States are for generic drugs. We have approved more generic drugs than any other administration by far. Generic drugs can be just as good as the brand names, but cost much less. Yet in less than 10% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients needed to make these drugs, they're currently manufactured in America. More than 50%, however, are made in India and China. And you'll be seeing a lot of things have happened. It's been happening, but it's happening at a more rapid pace right now. With this new agreement, my administration is using the Defense Production Act to provide a $765 million loan to support the launch of Kodak Pharmaceuticals. It's a great name when you think of it. Such a great name. It was one of the great brands in the world. Then people went digital and Kodak didn't follow. But now under very extraordinary leadership, they are following. And they're doing something that's a different field, and it's a field that they've really hired some of the best people in the world to be taking care of that company and watching that company, watching over it. But it's a breakthrough in bringing pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the United States. Under this contract, our 33rd use of the Defense Production Act. Remember when you were saying, I didn't use it enough, I didn't use it enough? And now you heard it's the 33rd use. We don't talk about it all the time. We used it, and we used it as a little bit of a threat, frankly, with certain companies that weren't doing as we were asking them to do, and it came through as both a threat and a usage. But this is our 33rd use of the Defense Production Act. Kodak will now produce generic active pharmaceutical ingredients, which is a big deal. Using advanced manufacturing techniques, Kodak will also make the key starting materials that are the building blocks for many drugs in a manner that is both cost competitive and environmentally safe. Will be competitive with almost all countries and soon with all countries. Once this new division is fully operational, in addition to all of the other plants that we've opened with other companies throughout the United States recently, it will produce as much as 25% of all active ingredients needed to make generic drugs in the USA. It's a big number, 25%. This agreement will directly create 360 new jobs at Kodak's factory in Rochester. That's just in the initial phase. And in Minneapolis, a place I have gotten to know very well, and it's a great place. And I'm very happy that we're able to help them with the problems that they've had recently. The National Guard, I want to thank the National Guard, both state and beyond. I want to thank them for the incredible job. They went in and they did some beautiful job. They cleaned it up. You didn't hear about the problems anymore. And indirectly, we created thousands more jobs all across our pharmaceutical supply chains. We have now been building a very big pharmaceutical supply chain, not only coming out of China, coming out of other countries also. I want to thank Peter Navarro, Adam Bowler, and Admiral Polovchek for their tremendous work to make this deal possible. Today's action is our latest step to build the greatest medical arsenal in history. We'll be able to do that through the Defense Production Act and other authorities. We have invested more than $3 billion in our nation's industrial base. We've contracted with companies such as Ford, General Motors, Philips, and General Electric to produce more than 200,000 ventilators by the end of this year, nearly 7 times more than we would ever do in a typical year. We've contracted with Honeywell, 3M, O&M, Halyard, Moldex, and Lidl to increase U.S. production of N95 masks, and we've brought it from less than 40 million a month to over 100 million a month by August, and we'll have 160 million in a very short while, 160 million a month. That's many times what we used to do. If you go back 2 years ago, many, many times. We're increasing domestic production of gloves by 1,000%. It's 1,000%. We will be manufacturing 450 million gloves annually by next year. We're finalizing contracts with our textile industry to make gowns in America with American fabric, which makes a lot of our businesses happy that produce the fabric. We have 13 million reusable gowns in the stockpile, and we'll continue to grow that number to 72 million this fall, which is a rapid escalation indeed. We made major investments in new rapid point-of-care tests. So we have, there's nothing like the rapid point where you get your answer in 5 minutes to 15 minutes to maybe 20, 25 minutes at the max. And we're already at about a 50% level, and we're bringing it up very substantially from there. We're growing domestic production from less than 250,000 test kits per month in May to 8 million test kits per month. There is nothing like this that has ever taken place anywhere in the world or close. Through our partnership with Puritan Manufacturing in the state of Maine, great state, we've increased production of test swabs from 30 million per month in June to 56 million per month now. As you remember, I went to Maine. I went to the plant where they do this. It was incredible. It was a great experience. And we'll produce over 100 million swabs per month by January. We've dramatically ramped up production of materials needed for a vaccine and are on track to rapidly produce 100 million doses as soon as a vaccine is approved, which could be very, very soon, and 500 million doses shortly thereafter. So we'll have 500 million doses. And logistically, we're using our military, our great military, a group of people, their whole life is based around logistics and bringing things to and from locations. And they'll be able to take care of this locationally and bringing it where it has to go very, very quickly. They're all mobilized. It's been fully set up. A very, very talented general is in charge. And when we have that vaccine, it will be discharged and taken care of. It'll be a very, very rapid process all over the country. And perhaps we'll be supplying a lot of the vaccine to other parts of the world like we do with ventilators and other things that we all of a sudden have become very good at making. When the China virus struck our nation, we mobilized the entire government and the private sector to acquire, source, and deliver life-saving supplies. HHS, FEMA, and the private sector combined have coordinated the delivery of more than 196 million N95 respirators, 815 million surgical masks, 20 million gloves, 34 million face shields, and 354 million gowns. That's a lot of gowns. Last week, FEMA completed a second shipment of personal protective equipment to over 15,000 nursing homes in the United States. Our big focus has been on nursing homes and senior citizens. As you know, that's where we want to take care. We have to take care of the most vulnerable, especially if they have a medical difficulty, a medical problem, in particular heart or diabetes, which provided a total of 1.2 million pairs of protective eyewear, 14 million masks, 66 million pairs of gloves, and 13 million gowns. We have replenished the long-neglected national stockpile. In January, the stockpile had 17.9 million N95 masks. Today, the stockpile has over 50 million N95 masks, and we'll be doubling that in a very short period of time, and then doubling that number. We've shipped more than 14,000 ventilators to areas of need across the country, and we've more than 75,000 available to deploy. Not a single American who has needed a ventilator has been denied a ventilator. And if you remember, early on when we were first hit with the virus, ventilators were very hard to come by. And now we're the largest maker anywhere in the world by far. And not only are we fully supplied and stocked, but we're helping other nations because ventilators are hard to build and hard to get. This is just a beginning. In the coming months, we will continue the largest onshoring campaign in American history. We will bring back our jobs, and we will make America the world's premier medical manufacturer and supplier. That's what's happening already. It's been happening now for quite some time. We're seeing improvements across the major metro areas and most hotspots. You can look at large portions of our country. It's corona-free, but we are watching very carefully California, Arizona, Texas, and most of Florida that's starting to head down in the right direction. And I think you'll see it rapidly head down very soon. But if you look, California, Arizona, Texas, and for the most part, most of Florida starting to head down. In the wake of the recent mass gatherings Americans have witnessed in the streets of Portland and Seattle, we are also tracking a significant rise in cases in both metropolitan areas because of what's been going on. And we, as you know, have done an excellent job of watching over Portland and watching our courthouse where they wanted to burn it down. They're anarchists, nothing short of anarchists, agitators. And we have protected it very powerfully. And if we didn't go there, I will tell you, you wouldn't have a courthouse. You'd have a $1 billion burned-out building. We're also working aggressively to combat the virus in Native American and Alaska Native communities. Under the CARES Act, we provided $8 billion to address the coronavirus in tribal communities, and we've worked very hard with tribal communities. They're very vulnerable to this horrible plague. That's the largest investment in Indian country in U.S. history. There's never been an investment that big in Indian country. We need every American to help protect our fellow citizens and prevent the spread of the disease. It's critical that younger Americans remember that even though they are at lower risk, and in fact, some age groups are at extraordinary low risk themselves, they can unknowingly spread the virus to others who are at higher risk. I ask all Americans, regardless of background or age, to practice social distancing, which people have gotten very used to, but we have to keep doing it. Remain vigilant about hygiene, avoid indoor gatherings and large gatherings, but especially indoor, especially where you have crowded bars, and that you wear a mask whenever appropriate. Through the genius of our scientists, the devotion of our doctors, the skill of our workers, and the dedication of our people, we will achieve victory over the virus and emerge stronger than ever before. We're looking at a very powerful year next year economically. The job numbers are looking outstanding, to put it mildly, set records. The numbers on retail sales came in 2 weeks ago at the highest number in the history of our country. So we look like we're heading to some very, very good economic times. That means jobs. That means stock market. Stock market is already doing very well. It's getting to a point very close to where it was when we had this, when we were hit with the plague. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Steve, please go ahead.
Could you clarify your acceptance speech for the Republican nomination? Are you physically going to be in Charlotte, or will you give the speech here or somewhere else?
We'll be doing a speech on Thursday, the main speech, the primary speech. Charlotte, they will be doing nominating on Monday. That's a different period, a different thing happening, but they'll be doing nominations on Monday. I speak on Thursday. Okay?
From where?
We'll be announcing it soon.
So you could be going to Charlotte.
Anybody have any ideas? we'll be announcing it very soon.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, the negotiations are ongoing right now for the next relief measures. Senate Republicans have put forth their plan. Do you support what Senate Republicans have put forward, and are there certain aspects that they have put forward that you don't support?
Yeah, there are actually, and we'll be talking about it. There are, also things that I very much support, but we'll be negotiating. It's sort of semi-irrelevant because the Democrats come with their needs and asks, and the Republicans go with theirs. So we'll be discussing it with Mitch and all of the other people involved. Kevin's been very active, as you know. All of the people involved. Steve Mnuchin's done a great job, keeps everybody together, both Democrat and Republican. And we'll see. We want to do what's best for the people. I want to do what's best for the people. I want to do what's best for the economy because that means jobs and lots of good things, all right?
What do you make of what Senate Republicans put forward, sir? What do you make of what Senate Republicans put forward?
Mr. President, two questions quickly. First, can you clarify your position on the efficacy of hydroxychloroquine after you retweeted a video making claims that it is effective?
I wasn't making claims. It's recommendations of many other people, including doctors. Many doctors think it is extremely successful. The hydroxychloroquine, coupled with the zinc and perhaps the zithromycin. But many doctors think it's extremely good, and some people don't. Some people, I think it's become very political. I happen to believe in it. I would take it. As you know, I took it for a 14-day period, and I'm here, right? I'm here. I happen to think it works in the early stages. I think frontline medical people believe that too, many. And so we'll take a look at it. But the one thing we know, it's been out for a long time, that particular formula, and that's essentially what it is, the pill. And it's been for malaria, lupus, and other things. It's safe. It doesn't cause problems. I had no problem. I had absolutely no problem. Felt no different. Didn't feel good, bad, or indifferent. And I tested, as you know. It didn't get me, and it's not going to hopefully hurt anybody. So we know from that standpoint, because it's been so many years, from a safety standpoint, it's safe. I happen to think, based on what I've read a lot about hydroxy. I happen to think that it has an impact, especially at the early years. There were some very good tests at Ford, and the doctor from Yale came up with a very, very strong testament to it. There was a group of doctors yesterday, a large group, that were put on the internet, and for some reason the internet wanted to take them down and took them off. I guess Twitter took them off, and I think Facebook took them off. I don't know why. I think they're very respected doctors. There was a woman who was spectacular in her statements about it, that she's had tremendous success with it. And they took her voice off. I don't know why they took her off, but they took her off. Maybe they had a good reason, maybe they didn't, I don't know. I can only say that from my standpoint, and based on a lot of reading and a lot of knowledge about it, I think it could have a very positive impact in the early stages. And I don't think you lose anything by doing it, other than politically, it doesn't seem to be too popular. You know why? Because I recommend it. When I recommend something, they like to say, don't use it. John, please.
On that note, Mr. President, last night in tweets that were deleted by Twitter, you said that Dr. Fauci misled the country about hydroxychloroquine. How so?
No, not at all. I don't even know what his stance is on it. I was just, he was at the task force meeting a little while ago. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci. It's sort of interesting. We've listened to Dr. Fauci. I haven't always agreed with him, and that's, I think, pretty standard. That's okay. He did not want us to ban put up the ban to China when China was heavily infected very badly, Wuhan. He didn't want to do that, and I did, and other things. And he told me I was right, and he told me I saved tens of thousands of lives, which was generous. But it's, I think it's fact. Then I did the ban on Europe. But I get along with him very well, and I agree with a lot of what he said. So, it's interesting. He's got a very good approval rating, and I like that. It's good. Because remember, he's working for this administration. He's working with us, John. We could have gotten other people. We could have gotten somebody else. It didn't have to be Dr. Fauci. he's working with our administration. And for the most part, we've done pretty much what he and others, Dr. Birx and others who are terrific, recommended. And he's got this high approval rating. So why don't I have a high approval rating with respect, and the administration, with respect to the virus? We should have a very high, because what we've done in terms of, we're just reading off about the masks and the gowns and the ventilators and numbers that nobody's seen, and the testing at 55 million tests. We tested more than anybody in the world. I have a graph that I'd love to show you. Perhaps you've seen it, where we're up here and the rest of the world is down at a level that's just a tiny fraction of what we've done in terms of testing. So it sort of is curious. A man works for us, with us very closely, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, also highly thought of, and yet they're highly thought of, but nobody likes me. It can only be my personality, that's all. Go ahead.
Could I just ask you also, DHS announced today that it is going to undertake a thorough review of the DACA program to decide whether to continue it, and if not, how to disband it. You had mentioned after the Supreme Court ruling about DACA that you were thinking about a path to citizenship for DACA recipients. Are you still thinking
We're going to work with a lot of people on DACA, and we're also working on an immigration bill, a merit-based system, which is what I've wanted for a long time. That decision was an interesting decision because it gave the president, as a president, more power than many people thought the president had. So the president is now, which happens to be me, in a position where I can do an immigration bill and a health care bill and some other bills, and you've seen some of them come along. We're going to do tremendous, we just signed it 3 days ago, we're doing tremendous prescription drug price reductions, tremendous. It could be over 50%, whether it's favored nations clauses or anything else. I mean, it's tremendous numbers we're talking about. You know, you go to some countries and they'll sell like a pill for 10 cents, and in the United States it costs $2. And it's the same basic factory, it's the same everything. The United States bears the cost of all of these low prices that you see all over the world, where people go to Canada to buy a prescription drug from the United States. Not going to happen with me. It's not going to happen with me. So, John, I think one of the exciting things, got very little coverage, and that's okay, but the people understand it. I think we will be reducing prescription drug prices by massive amounts, numbers that have never been done before. Other thing, in 51 years, we got, as you know, last year, drug prices came down. First time in 51 years that they came down. Now, with what I signed last week, I think that drug prices can come down by numbers like 50% and even greater in certain instances.
But if I could come back to where I originally started, are you still considering a path to citizenship for current DACA recipients?
We are going to make DACA happy and the DACA people and representatives happy, and we're also going to end up with a fantastic merit-based immigration system. Please.
Yeah, on the drug pricing, you had said that pharmaceutical representatives would be here today for a meeting to talk about bringing drug prices down or to negotiate. That meeting was canceled. Why?
I didn't know a meeting was canceled. Oh, a meeting with the drug...
You said there would be a meeting today with drug companies.
Well, I said there would be a meeting, a meeting sometime this week. Yeah, they want to meet. I mean, I don't know that it was canceled. They want to meet. I thought the meeting was actually scheduled for tomorrow.
We will see, I guess.
I thought the meeting was scheduled tomorrow. Sorry about the dates, but you know, I see how upset you are by it.
On the
Go ahead,
FBI
please, Bloomberg.
Sir, on the FBI
Bloomberg, Mr.
headquarters.
Bloomberg. You look like Mr. Bloomberg. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I
Would
think
you
you look
support
much
a
better,
temporary
actually.
extension of supplemental unemployment aid if the deal that they're hashing out in Congress isn't completed by the end of this week?
We'll do something. We're going to take care of the people. Yeah, it's a good question. We're going to take care of the people.
The woman that you said was a great doctor in that video that you retweeted last night said that masks don't work and there is a cure for COVID-19, both of which health experts say is not true. She's also made videos saying that doctors make medicine using DNA from aliens and that they're trying to create a vaccine to make you immune from becoming religious.
Well, maybe it's the same, maybe it's not, but I can tell you this. She was on air along with many other doctors. They were big fans of hydroxychloroquine, and I thought she was very impressive in the sense that from where she came, I don't know which country she comes from, but she said that she's had tremendous success with hundreds of different patients, And I thought her voice was an important voice, but I know nothing about her.
Masks don't work.
Yeah, go ahead, Paula.
Last week you said
Go ahead.
masks. Last week, well, real quick. Last
Okay,
week you said
thank you very much,
Mr.
everybody.
President.
Thank you.
On the COVID relief bill,
You said masks do work, Mr. President. So isn't
you
that
said your retweets get
President Trump there finishing up a news briefing, taking questions from reporters. Certainly, the headline seems to be the president still touting hydroxychloroquine as a treatment and possible cure for COVID-19. The president reiterating there that he used it, believes it still has a positive effect, at least in the early stages of the virus. He is here, after all, and that says something. Of course, there was some controversy earlier today because a video made by Breitbart touting hydroxychloroquine as a cure ended up on social media. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube all took it down. Twitter even temporarily suspending the account of Donald Trump Jr., of course, the president's son, after he tweeted out this video. I want to bring in our Emily Wilkins, who's been listening in to the conversation. Emily, what do you make of the president doubling down on this hydroxychloroquine strategy theme?
You know, this is something that, you know, we've seen Trump continue to push and continue to say positive things about, even as you're seeing numerous doctors come out and say that it's not something that they advise people to take because there are risks associated with it. Trump, you know, Trump has always sort of, you know, promoted his own message, done his own thing. He's not, I think, known for listening to his advisors all the time. But there's also interesting news today about the administration giving a multi-million-dollar loan to Kodak to help produce more components of medical drugs in the United States. That was sort of Trump's main opening message. It's something that he hopes will lead the U.S. to be less reliant on other countries for generic drugs and potentially also bring the cost down.
He did, of course, congratulate Kodak on that deal this giant loan coming from the government under the Defense Production Act. Okay, Emily Wilkins, our congressional reporter, thank you so much for weighing in. I do want to move on now to the big tech antitrust hearing that is happening tomorrow. The CEOs of Facebook, Google, Apple, and Amazon will all be testifying. We spoke to the chair of the House Antitrust Subcommittee, David Cicilline, Representative David Cicilline, who will be running the proceedings tomorrow for his take on big tech and how the companies have been behaving. Let's take a listen.
This is the first major antitrust investigation the Congress of the United States has engaged in about 50 years. The chief evil that antitrust is designed to address is economic coercion. And to the extent that these large technology platforms are behaving like monopolists.
The antitrust issues facing Facebook and Amazon are much different than the antitrust issues facing, for example, Apple. Zuckerberg will get the majority of the ire. Bezos will get the majority of the praise and the idolatry. And I think Cook and Sundar Pichai are just going to stay out of the way.
Google is the only is the only actual monopoly. When you have monopoly power, you have to have regulation. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll probably get closer to it than we've ever been.
Sometimes I have negative opinions about Apple being a little too much control over you, but I've thought about this one, you know, this one that's going on right now with antitrust, and I actually take Apple's side on this one.
The use of the App Store, you know, developers who are startups are basically being forced to pay a ransom of 30%, or they are denied access to that marketplace. This is 30%. This is highway robbery.
30% and giving you guarantees and protection and security in the apps that you could possibly download. When you look at what happened in the Android world, oh my gosh, yeah, I don't object to the 30% at all.
I can't think of another industry where as large as this industry, $150 billion, where one company has 93% share. Sundar is very likable. I think Google benefits from the fact that it's not an easy business to understand. So I would expect that Sundar and Tim will largely just stay away from the train wreck and the praise that is going to be the Zuck and Bezos show.
Joining us now to discuss the hearing that will be happening tomorrow further, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor, who has reported extensively on technology companies, especially Facebook. David, we just received prepared remarks that Mark Zuckerberg will be making tomorrow. He touts being an American company. He touts U.S. law and the ability to innovate under that law. He also highlights China, and of course, Facebook has made the argument in the past that breaking up or regulating U.S. tech companies in the wrong way could give China an advantage over the United States. What do you make of what Zuckerberg is planning to tell lawmakers tomorrow?
Well, the thing he says in the statements that were released that I most agree with is that some kind of regulation is necessary. And I think, he's a little bit standing apart from the other leaders in saying that as firmly and as repeatedly as he has. And unfortunately, his own behavior keeps making it obvious how much that regulation is needed, because on a number of the issues, including electoral interference and hate speech, he just hasn't really gotten to where he needs to be. And, he says in his testimony also, apparently, we have more work to do, which is something that Facebook always says, and it is consummately true, but it isn't particularly helpful. Why don't they do the work? They have vast resources, an enormous amount of cash, and even in this economy, they're thriving. So let's see some action that hasn't yet happened. They've done a lot. They just haven't done enough.
In that interview with Scott Galloway, professor at NYU, he made a comment where he said, the only person that would lose here is the CEO, who would be just the CEO of one of the 7 realms and not of all of Westeros if some kind of regulation were to happen. How much do you believe this is about power versus principle?
You mean the Congress trying to just exert power over these companies?
Or the companies running themselves the way they do?
Well, obviously, there's something so fundamentally true about some of the things Representative Johnson was saying to you earlier. These companies, the scale of influence they have over our lives is fundamentally wrong. However, the problem is that they do a lot of things for us that we like. And I also thought it was very interesting the way he talked about these hearings as something of an education for the American people, because ultimately that is what is needed. Look, many of the services of all 4 of these companies are deeply appreciated and even beloved by a large number of Americans. So that is not going to change. On the other hand, they do cause genuine harms, and that needs to be examined more carefully, more methodically. And I applaud the committee over the last year for having really delved into a number of the areas where problems still exist. And there is no simple solution. Breakup is not going to be the solution, by the way.
Now, the CEOs are going to be testifying virtually. They're all 4 also testifying together. Will there be safety in numbers here and less of a chance of fireworks or some sort of public reckoning?
Yeah, I mean, it has a little bit of the feeling of a show trial, but for the 4 of them, there is definite safety in numbers, because in reality, each company represents completely different issues. There are overlapping issues, as Representative Johnson did mention, being platforms, sometimes suppressing competition in more and more cases. But there are so many different issues that the committee will simply not have time to delve into. So I think one of the reasons Tim Cook agreed very belatedly to join this was because he realized he couldn't really get that much pressure, because there simply won't be the ability to focus on any given company's issues.
Quickly, do you believe Apple stands out in some way from the rest? I mean, the case has been made that perhaps Apple is the lowest on the list in terms of egregiousness on anti-competitiveness.
Absolutely. I mean, they are harder to define as a monopolist, that's for sure. I mean, Amazon is not really a monopolist by most conventional definitions either, although Lina Khan, who's the chief counsel for the majority on this committee, has come up with some interesting arguments why they should still be considered subject to antitrust enforcement. But yeah, Apple doesn't really cause as much agita to experts like myself, to the general public, to politicians. I mean, and Tim Cook is a brilliant politician, as has been noted in some of the articles leading up to these hearings. He's been able to maintain a good relationship with the Chinese government and Donald Trump. That's a masterful stroke of politicking.
That said, you have the CEO of Epic Games, who we spoke to earlier on the show, who disagrees, the CEO of Spotify as well. We will be watching the hearing tomorrow, and across all of it, David Kirkpatrick, our Bloomberg contributing editor, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for watching this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Do not miss our continuing coverage of that hearing tomorrow, and our special coverage right here on Beat Tech. Bloomberg Daybreak Australia is next. This is Bloomberg.